Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping right into a pretty big story shaking things up for Apple.
Yeah, we've been looking at these reports about the sudden tariffs.
Right, the ones imposed in early April 2025 by President Trump. It seems like they've really hit Apple hard.
They did. And it wasn't just one place. The order covered, what, over 100 countries?
Yeah, but for Apple, the real pressure points were clearly China, India, and Vietnam. Their main production hubs.
Absolutely key locations for them.
So the order was signed April 2nd. And while some countries got that 90-day pause starting April 9th, the initial shockwaves were felt almost instantly.
Really?
So for anyone following Apple, this whole situation is a stark example of how global trade politics can just ripple outwards, right?
Absolutely. And the market reaction, it was pretty dramatic.
Tell us about that.
Well, between April 2nd and 7th, Apple's stock just plummeted, down 15%.
15%. Wow.
Which translates to a $640 billion loss in market value. Just gone like that.
$640 billion.
Yeah.
That's enormous. More than some entire companies are worth.
Exactly. I mean, think about Tesla's whole market cap. It was more than that. There was a little bounce back, but the volatility stuck around. Lots of nervousness.
And that really highlights Apple's vulnerability, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially the heavy reliance on China.
Oh, completely. Reports suggest around 90% of iPhones are assembled there, plus most of their other big products.
So when goods from China suddenly got slapped with these tariffs, Apple was, well, right in the line of fire.
Mm-hmm. And that leads to the next big question for consumers, really. Prices.
Yeah, what could this actually mean for the price tag on, say, the next iPhone?
Well, let's take an example. The iPhone 16 Pro Max, maybe around $1,600 before, right?
Okay.
If you add, hypothetically, a 54% tariff, you're suddenly looking at maybe $2,300.
Whoa. That's a massive jump.
It is. And analysts were talking about maybe a, 17 to 18% increase across the board on everything.
That could seriously dent demand. People might just hold off on upgrading.
You'd have to think so. And the timing is rough because Apple had been trying to, spread things out a bit.
Right. They were making moves into India and Vietnam, trying to diversify away from China.
Exactly. But here's the kicker.
Uh-oh.
Those efforts got sideswiped, too. India faced a 26% tariff in this new order, and Vietnam got hit with 46%.
So the backup plan suddenly got way more expensive.
Pretty much neutralized their strategy, or at least complicated it hugely.
Mm-hmm.
The places they were moving to became costly alternatives overnight.
Okay, so if China's expensive, and India and Vietnam are now also expensive, what about bringing it all home to the U.S.?
Yeah, the reshoring question. The reports we saw suggest it's incredibly difficult.
How so?
Just the cost estimate to move even 10% of the supply chain stateside was around $30 billion.
$30 billion for just 10%.
And it would take maybe 3 years to even do that much. It just shows the sheer scale, the complexity of what they've built globally. It's not something you unwind quickly.
Not at all. It's a massive ship to turn.
But interestingly, it looks like Apple saw something coming.
Oh, what do they do?
The reports mention that back in late March, just before the tariffs hit, they chartered at least 5 cargo planes.
Cargo planes?
For what? To airlift iPhones and other gear out of India, specifically to the U.S. Seems like a move to build up inventory, beat the clock.
That's fascinating. But a quick maneuvering there.
Shows how companies have to react fast to this stuff.
Yeah. What's also interesting, though, is how quiet Apple's been publicly. Tim Cook hasn't really commented, right? Which is a bit different from past tariff situations.
It is noticeable. Usually they're quite vocal. So analysts are watching now. Will they lobby? Will we see prices adjust when the iPhone 17 comes out?
Lots of uncertainty still.
And stepping back, looking at the bigger picture, this tariff crisis hits Apple at a time when they're already facing pressure.
Like on the AI front, people saying they're lagging a bit.
Exactly. So imagine if iPhone sales do take a hit because of higher prices. That potentially means less revenue, less R&D money perhaps, just when they need to be pushing hard on things like AI.
So it's not just about the cost of a phone, it's potentially a longer-term strategic issue for them.
It could be, yeah. It layers another challenge onto their plate.
Okay, so let's sort of wrap this deep dive up. The key takeaway seems to be these abrupt tariffs created a real headache for Apple.
A major one. Impacting their stock, threatening consumer prices, and really messing with their supply chain diversification plans.
A perfect storm, almost.
You could say that.
All right, so we've covered the immediate impacts and the challenges.
Yeah, and it leaves us with a sort of a final thought for listeners to chew on.
Okay, with that.
Well, considering Apple's immense resources, their global reach, their influence, what truly innovative paths might they explore now? Beyond just tweaking supply chains, how might they navigate these unpredictable geopolitical, economic storms in the future? It's a big question.
A very interesting one indeed. Something to watch. Thanks for diving in today.